Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lionel Barber. I'm your moderator for this session, and I'm going to sit down and then in turn welcome the distinguished presidents and leaders of their countries to this panel at this Three Seas conference. Thank you. So, President Egils Levits, President Rumen Radev of Bulgaria, Mr. Andrej Plenković, Prime Minister of the Republic of Croatia, Mr. Milos Vystrčil, President of the Senate of the Parliament of the Czech Republic, Mr. Karis, President of the Republic of Estonia, Valdis Dombrovskis, who's the Vice President of the Commission, Franz-Walter Steinmeier from Germany, the President, Mr. Gitanas Nausėda, President of the Republic of Lithuania, and finally, Mr. Andrej Duda, who is the President of the Republic of Poland. Now, just one word. When I was the editor of the Financial Times, I had the unenviable task of being in charge of 585 journalists, better known as anarchists. And it was a difficult job. Today, my job is much harder because I have presidents and prime ministers, and they will all want to make their contribution, which will be fascinating. But please, if I may say, gentlemen, can you just keep your answers reasonably brief? Because otherwise... Yeah, well, I knew you were going to be difficult, President Steinmeier, but otherwise I would be forced to be the editor, and it's not very pleasant. Anyway, there we go. So, just to start, we've obviously had a meeting of the heads of state in terms of discussing Three Seas initiative. We are aware of the grim facts of the war. But I'm going to ask the President of Latvia, President Levits, give us a sense of what was discussed this afternoon and where you've come down in terms of a positive declaration.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have discussed three main points. The first point is what is the mission of the Three Seas initiative. And we confirmed, of course, it's politically inspired but commercially driven. So the main task of the initiative is to promote investments especially in three areas, infrastructural areas. Energy, which became more and more important because of the war against Ukraine, transport and digital. We discussed these projects and how to promote further investments in these areas. So, second question, of course, is Ukraine, because security situation, but also economic situation, political situation in Europe has fundamentally changed since the last summit in Sofia, hosted by colleague Rumen Radev. So, and how to react to that? We are all supporting Ukraine. It was a common sense of all the 12 member states of the Three Seas initiative. We supporting also to give the Ukraine the candidate status for the European Union, and to work closer with Ukraine also within the initiative of Three Seas. Also, President Zelensky has a video message to us, live video message. So he explained also the situation in Ukraine. European commitment of Ukraine, and we all agree that Ukraine belongs to Europe, and Europe is incomplete without Ukraine. So this is a very strong message and in line with politics of the whole European Union. I should mention that in the initiative there are 12 member states of the European Union, all member states, so quite a half of the 27 members. And it is a region of economic growth, because the economic growth in our region is much more faster as in general. And also with a growing political weight within the European Union, also, for example, in the crisis after the beginning of the war in Ukraine, it was also visible the leadership of member states of this region. So Ukraine, second point. Third point, very important, also the announcement of United States to participate in the 3Cs initiative fund. And I think it is a very good sign that the United States is committed to this region, and we are sharing the same goals, and it is in the interest of all three stakeholders, I would say, in the interest of the 3Cs initiative countries, in the interest of the United States, and in the interest of the whole European Union, of the whole Europe. So I welcome and thank for this commitment and this participation of the United States. And of course, we had also support and interest from two other nations, also Japan and United Kingdom. So we see that the initiative which started 7 years ago is growing, is becoming more concrete, and I think with a growing economic and political weight. I think this was in principle the main objectives of our summit this year, and next summit will take place in Bucharest. Would be organized by President Iohannis. So, thank you.
Thank you for that admirably concise summary of the discussion. I'm aware that Prime Minister Plenković, you have a plane to catch, so I'm going to actually invite you, not just because of the plane, but also because Croatia has been a driving force behind the 3Cs initiative. So from your perspective, what opportunities do you see go forward? We're going to talk about the way the strategic context has been changed because of the war, but perhaps you can focus on opportunities first.
Thank you very much, Lionel. Good evening, everybody, and big thanks to President Levits and Prime Minister Karis and Vice President of the Commission Dombrovskis for having hosted us here in Riga. Croatia indeed was one of those countries that initiated the whole 3Cs initiative cooperation, linking the Baltic, the Black Sea and the Adriatic, and I am very pleased that we are really now showing strength, continuity and resilience. We are of course faced with the entirely new context. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has changed everything: security, architecture, humanitarian, political, economic, financial, diplomatic, energy, food. There is no single subject now that has remained the same as it was a couple of years ago. But I believe that even our debate today has demonstrated the vitality of the 3Cs initiative. First of all, the strong commitment of the United States, great contribution from other partners, the big countries, who are really carefully seeing now the potential of the cooperation among the EU member states in the East, but with Germany, with Austria on board. This is really a strength of this initiative. Our feeling is that in the altered circumstances, the energy infrastructure is now clearly defined as the critical infrastructure. And everything that we can do within the framework of our cooperation to be better linked, better connected, to provide energy supply security to each other should be the priority of this initiative. Croatia made its own contribution. We have opened last year an LNG terminal in the island of Krk. I just announced today that we are going to increase its current capacity from 2.9 billion cubic meters to 6.1 billion, going far beyond the needs of our industry and our households, so as to play a regional role. We want to invest also through the 3Cs initiative fund into the port of Rijeka, which is one of those northern Adriatic ports that can really, with a good connection of trains, of highways, of supplies towards Central and Eastern Europe, be really an entry point, a sort of a gateway for the whole region coming from the Mediterranean. Our position in terms of what has been done by Russia was very strong, very clear. I repeated it today, a lot of solidarity also with Madam Vice President of Verkhovna Rada, Madam Olena Kondrachuk, and I'm very happy that President Zelensky addressed us today. And I really hope that also at the European Council on Thursday and Friday we'll find a consensus and send this strong symbolic gesture to Ukraine by granting a candidate status. This is something that the Ukrainian people and also the Ukrainian authorities deserve, especially in this dire situation. So Croatia remains very much committed through the 3Cs initiative, and we shall do that also next year in Romania and in all the summits that will follow. And I'm pleased there was a large businessman delegation and businesswoman delegation here from Zagreb and other Croatian cities present here today in Riga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'm now going to turn to President Nausėda of Lithuania to ask his perspective, but also a specific question regarding Kaliningrad, because your government has, in line with the EU sanctions, decided to prevent the transit of Russian goods through to Kaliningrad. And what do you think both the importance of that decision, the significance of that decision will be?
First of all, I would like to use the opportunity and thank my colleague Egils Levits, the President of Latvia, and of course my other colleague in European Council, Prime Minister Krišjānis Kariņš, for this excellent organization of this event. And I think we had very good opportunity to exchange views, to try to evaluate the current situation, especially taking into account Russia's war against Ukraine. And I hope, and I think, and I am pretty sure that our 3Cs initiative will play even larger role, because we have the destiny to help, to support Ukrainians in the situation. And they see many opportunities to contribute more to the solving of the problems by Ukrainian government, especially providing the possibilities, the channels to export the grain through the Baltic states, and to create some logistical corridor through the territory of Poland. On the other hand, we also had the opportunity with my colleague President Andrej Duda and by the way Egils Levits to open the gas interconnector Poland-Lithuania, which is also a very important step in creation of more resilient energy infrastructure, which will be suitable and very helpful to have more alternatives to supply the energy, also not only to the Baltic region through that LNG terminal in Klaipėda seaport, but also to the south countries, to Ukraine, to Moldova in the future. Now, switching back to your question regarding Kaliningrad, this is not national sanctions imposed on Russian Federation, and you mentioned it very correctly that we just implement the sanctions of European Union It affects about 40 to 50% of total production going through the territory of Lithuania. And as somebody can expect that Russian Federation reacted very nervously to this decision. They try to understand what is the current situation, what is the content of our actions, and they just want to repeat that there are no any other attempts just to provide and implement the sanctions which were imposed on the European Union level. I hope we will clear this issue, and I hope that having in mind that we will have the reactions of European Commission and European Union institutions, we will manage to just to come back to the normal language, and I hope it will take place quite soon.
Thank you. I am going to come to President Duda in a minute to ask him a couple of questions, but Vice President Dombrovskis, can you just elucidate, because there you are in the Commission, which has been drawing up all the sanctions. That unit has been very influential. Can you explain how this works with the EU sanctions as it applied against Russia, that the link to Kaliningrad? Because this could be quite important.
Yeah, well, as regards EU sanctions against Russia, let me start with a broader point. It's very clear that we need to continue to provide all necessary support to Ukraine, and we need to continue to apply sanctions against Russia to put pressure on Putin to stop its aggressive war. And so from the European Commission side, that's exactly the approach we are taking concerning this issue. We managed to have a very brief exchange with President Nausėda on this topic. Of course, clearly we need to gather all the facts and implications, but as President Nausėda outlined, what Lithuania is doing, they're applying EU sanctions. He also outlined that steps taken are also not contradicting a bilateral EU-Russia agreement concerning the transit between mainland Russia and Kaliningrad. And in this case, indeed, if it's application of the EU sanctions, it's clearly that we need to be with our member states who are applying the sanctions.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're going to come to Ukraine and reconstruction again in a minute. President Duda, Poland is obviously the critical country at the center of this Three Seas initiative. You border, you have a very, very important border. We talked about cooperation between Poland and Lithuania on energy. What other areas of cooperation do you see where Poland can make a difference?
Well, thank you very much. And what can I say now? I remember this day when I met President of Croatia, Madam Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, first time. That was September 2015, and in Krakow, and she proposed me to start a cooperation in a matter of gas supplies. She said that they are planning in Croatia to build to establish the LNG terminal on Kirk Island, and she said, and you are building your LNG terminal in Świnoujście. That was true because the terminal was under construction, and we finished that issue in 2016. And she said, and we should join pipelines, yes, from our LNG terminal, between our LNG terminal and your LNG terminal, because we need to have a better situation in this very important issue of energy security, gas security in our region, in our part of Europe. And she said, and you know, and this is very important to start the special kind of cooperation between our countries, but not only between our countries, not only between Poland and Croatia, but also among our countries in our region of Europe, in Central Europe. I said, yes, this is a very good idea, because, and you know, and I had in my mind this tremendous masses of Polish tourists traveling to Croatia every year for holidays, yes, to spend holidays on their seaside, and I said, yes, we need good connections, we need good energy connections, we need also good roads, we need good railways. Because it's important for our people, for our security, for our development in our part of Europe. Yes, this is a very good idea. So that was the beginning, and now,
Yeah.
when you observe this situation we have now here in Central Europe, this terrible war in Ukraine, provoked and started by that peaceful country, as Ukraine was, I think this is the visible evidence that was the one of I met and I had during those almost 7 years of my being in the office.
Thank you.
Yes. Because you know, we had this, like in a nutshell, few weeks ago, when we refused Russians to pay in Russian rubles for gas, yes,
for energy,
that was against the contract between Russia and Poland, and we said no. This is against the contract. We will pay you in euro or in dollars. I don't remember, but not in your rubles. And they said, okay, so we will close. We will close supplies. We will close the pipe. We said, okay, if you want to break this agreement we have between our countries completely, you can do that. We will sue you, but you can do that if you want. And they did it.
Right.
But we had interconnectors with Lithuania, with Germany, and now we almost have also interconnector with Slovakia, and we have energy security in gas.
Good.
And
That's underlined the point about connectivity, and we're all in this together. I'd like to turn to President. Are there any constraints on Germany joining this initiative full time, or do you want to stay as a kind of strategic partner? And what are the arguments in your? I mean, you are a former two-time foreign minister of Germany, well versed in foreign policy. What are the arguments going through your head as you balance this?
First of all, I'm happy to be with all of you, my dear friends. Difficult situation for Europe we are faced to, so therefore I think first of all, not only thanks for the organization of this meeting, but I think we should be a little bit proud regarding the European Union. It was never expected before. Secondly, this is not my first meeting of the 3Cs initiative I'm joining to, and I remember years ago, during my capacity as foreign minister, there was a critical discussion inside the 3C initiative member countries if others which are not exactly part of the region in Eastern and Central Europe should join the conference and the initiative. And, I was happy in those days as foreign minister to be invited as a partner and a guest. So therefore, during the last years, we have intensified our cooperation. We have a common project when it comes to cross-border infrastructure and energy platforms, especially with Poland, for instance. So therefore, we are on the way, and I can imagine that the German government one day in the next years is deciding for the application for being a member of the initiative.
So do you have candidate status?
Something similar, yeah. In between.
Thank you. A Czech Republic perspective, please, on this. But again, let's talk about the sort of opportunity. From Prague's point of view.
Thank you very much. I'm here the first time, and I'm satisfied. But we have a lot of work before, and we need not only politicians, but we need to businessmen, and it is very important for us. And we will see. Yes, our situation isn't good. Ukraine needs our support, and I'm satisfied with them that I heard here that support is here, and it is very important for us. For Czech Republic, I have to be shortly. Yes.
Yeah. No, maybe not that short, but anyway, but that's fine. I want to make sure that everybody is included in this panel discussion, and I think hearing from Estonia would be extremely valuable. And again, looking forward at a new narrative, the opportunities. We're going to come to Ukraine in just a minute. Please, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I would also like to thank the organizers of this meeting, especially with business partners. Well, Estonia can actually quit this initiative because we benefited already. That means we got sustainable data center in Estonia. It costs around 70 million, so it's good for us. But this initiative is not meant for that. But we all benefit, and then we quit. So, but from our perspective, what I want to say is that we should get closer to the minds of people, especially to the minds of businessmen. And then second point is that we need to do more work when we have this initiative, but there are a number of initiatives in Europe and also many funds in Europe, but it's important to basically match these different funds together, and because we are mostly middle and small-sized countries, and we should make it 1+1 to make it free. So the coordination is important and collaboration is important. And we are from the northern part of this initiative, although we have quite close connections to Finland. Actually, this initiative is nothing new. It was already in 1920s, and then Finland was supposed to be a part of it as well. But we don't have many connections to the southern part of Europe. And you can imagine if you need some kind of humanitarian corridor or military connections between south and north, at the moment it's almost impossible. And we also see the lack of these connections because of the war in Ukraine. So we can't get even grain out of this country. So we should all benefit. As I said in the beginning, we need to make it available to businessmen. It's going to be attractive, first of all, and then second, we need this kind of success stories like Estonia already has this data center. Thank you.
Thank you. President Radev of Bulgaria, we're going from north to south here. You have some tangible examples of where this initiative has actually helped, and you also have a very good example of energy connectivity with your gas connector to Greece. You want to tell us a bit about that?
First of all, we should not forget what is the main goal of this initiative: to increase our cohesion and to increase the standard and quality of life of our citizens. That means we must develop our economies stronger and more competitive. I cannot list all the factors, and it is not my business about having competitive and strong economies, but I would like to touch the base and the top. The base is having autonomous, strong energy security system, access to reliable, predictable, cheap energy, to have well-developed transport network, and the top is innovations. Talking about energy, let's take a look at the reality. The average price of the energy for the European Union is between 220 to 250 euro per megawatt hour. In the United States, this price is less than 100 euro. In China, it is less than 10 euro. So how can we compete in the middle and in the long run? Our economies are losing our competitiveness compared to other strategic players. And what can we do? We should be, of course, more connected, but we need to think about the next level, what is beyond gas, for instance. We are absolutely dependent on gas. We do not produce, with some exclusions, Romania a little bit, but we do not produce gas. So it's time to think about the next level. And the problem is developing renewables, which is, of course, the best choice, but developing renewables without developing reliable technology for storing the energy is not a solution. We can just develop the perfect crisis in front of us. Again, we are in such a crisis.
Okay, so what's a realistic timetable for reducing or eliminating the dependence of these countries, your country, on Russian gas?
We have been working heavily on developing the next level for storing energy, batteries, but not only. We have perfect conditions. We have a well-developed design to produce green hydrogen, for instance. Bulgaria is the southeast country from the initiative. We have very efficient solar systems. We are building huge capacity, and we have the ambition, and our business has already united in a big consortium to produce about 20 million tons of green hydrogen per year, far exceeding our needs. So it's time to think about transportation and new types of pipelines.
Yeah.
Let's say for green hydrogen as well.
That's impressive. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when I was in Brussels and I spent 6 years as the Financial Times correspondent between 92 and 98, went through some crises, but whenever I had to try and understand either a tax problem or an energy problem or a geopolitical problem, I always went to the European Commission, because although they're seen as very bureaucratic, they have very, very smart people who have a totally global, pan-national view. So this is your moment, Vice President Dombrovskis. No pressure. Just in a very succinct way, tell us how this initiative complements existing EU policies like on structural regional aid, why it's a very useful complement to what's already happening on an EU basis.
Yeah, indeed, this regional initiative is indeed a good complement to many things which we are doing already in the EU. So you already outlined some of the EU funding which is available to the region. So 3C's initiative is dealing with a number of issues like transport, energy interconnections in the context of green and digital transitions of the economy. So this year, particularly topical is the question of energy interconnections, energy system adjustments, taking into account the need to rapidly move away from dependency on Russian fossil fuels. And exactly in this 3C's initiative region, there is lots of issues with this energy dependence, and therefore lots of scope to work together how to best address it also regionally. And for this to be successful, it's important that available EU funding like cohesion policy, recovery and resilience facility, connecting Europe facility, global gateway initiative, that all this available funding is used in a synergy and in a coordinated way. And from that point of view, from European Commission side, we very much welcome that this is also reflected in a joint statement, in a sense also calling for countries of the 3C's initiative to coordinate the implementation of their national recovery and resilience plans to indeed ensure maximal synergies, because that's what also the 3C's initiative is basically about. Okay,
thank you very much. We do have Elena, excuse me if I don't pronounce it correctly, Elena Kodachuk from Ukraine, who's going to talk, just both ask a question, maybe make some observations on what you've heard, but I think particularly to answer the question, can you give us some sense of just the economic damage done by this war to date and what will be needed in terms of reconstruction?
Thank you, Mr. Barber. I speak Ukrainian because it will be easy for me to say some emotions. But Markian, help me if you want. Yes, to translate. Знаєте, ми сьогодні отримали такий дуже добрий сигнал для України, дякуючи пану президенту Польщі, пану Дуді, тому що дуже приємно чути, що Україну сьогодні розглядають як одну з партнерок Триморя. Але знаєте, я би сьогодні хотіла також, щоб ми говорили більше про те, що Україна – це є частина Європи. І саме в Європі йде зараз наймасштабніша війна з часів Другої світової. Щодня російська агресія завдає неймовірних збитків в Україні в частині цивільних втрат, також економічних втрат. Я хочу, щоб ви тільки почули пару цифр, які зараз говорять самі про себе, тому що в нас зараз знищено понад 621 дитячий садочок, понад 1123 закладів освіти, 643 медзакладів, понад 300 мостів, 11 цивільних аеропортів, понад 228 взагалі заводів, понад 40 мільйонів квадратних метрів житла пошкоджено або зруйновані. Наші міста, в принципі, перетворюються на попіл, і це десь 80% міст, яких просто руйнують авіаударами. Знаєте, ця війна не тільки просто україно-російська війна, це європейська війна, і наслідки цієї війни будуть чути всі країни Європейського Союзу. Тому що це буде відбиватися, зрозуміло, на соціальній напрузі населення в кожній з країн. Це буде також відбиватися і на інфляції, на ціні на енергоносії і так далі. І ми не знаємо, скільки буде тривати ця агресія. Але ми розуміємо, що тільки відповідальністю і спільними діями країни Європейського Союзу зможуть допомогти нам і зможуть допомогти одне одному, тому що далі про ці руйнування і відновлення України треба говорити всі разом. Ми знаємо, що за експертами, міжнародними експертами, десь біля 600 мільярдів потребує Україна зараз на реконструкцію. І я хотіла би від імені президента, від імені уряду, від імені парламенту України просто запросити всіх інвесторів, всі уряди відповідально поставитися до можливих інвестиційних проєктів, які так зараз необхідні для України. Звичайно, що Україна буде радо стати учасницею в майбутньому Триморя, так само, як ми дуже очікуємо на позитивний результат стати кандидатом вже до Європейського Союзу.
So, thank you, Lionel. I will try to translate very briefly. So, first of all, today I heard a lot about Ukraine being considered as a partner of the 3Cs countries, and we got a good signal of readiness to consider Ukraine as an integral part of the initiative, thanks to all participants on today's panel, and especially to President Duda. And I would like us to talk about Ukraine as a part of Europe, which unfortunately is a part of the largest war since World War II. The Russian aggressor strikes on Ukraine's civil and industrial infrastructure only on a daily basis. As of now, the list of damaged, destroyed or seized objects includes 621 kindergartens, 1,123 educational institutions, 643 medical institutions, 228 factories and enterprises, 295 bridges and crossings, 12 military airfields and 11 civilian airports. More than 40 million square meters of housing were damaged or totally destroyed. Some cities are actually destroyed by more than 80%, 90%. The total material damage is estimated at 600 billion euros, and this amount is growing every day. These losses are not only ours, and this is not just the Russian-Ukrainian war. After all, the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine are being felt today in every EU country, and especially in the countries of the 3Cs initiative. This war directly threatens global and European food and energy security. Rising prices, slowing European economies, inflation, social tensions, and rising poverty. All this is already affecting and will affect the political stability of each EU country. Unfortunately, we do not know how long the aggression will last. But we know very well that it is our common responsibility to win this war and to start rebuilding Ukraine. Therefore, on behalf of the President of Ukraine, the Parliament and the government, I invite everyone to take part and to participate in the reconstruction process. We're really looking forward to get the most acceptable status in the 3Cs initiative, and we are looking forward to get good results in the upcoming EU summit, where Ukraine we believe will get the status of the candidate to EU. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask Scott Nathan, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the U.S. International Development and Finance Corporation, and has made the American government has made a very important commitment to supporting the investment fund of the 3Cs. Just to say a few words, perhaps, from the point of view of the reconstruction effort and how what's been said in Washington about potential support in line with the Europeans.
Well, thanks very much, Lionel. And as you said, we're delighted to be here on behalf of the United States to support the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. And the announcement today of a $300 million commitment of financing was very important for that. But in regard to your question about Ukraine, we very much look forward to the day when reconstruction efforts can begin in earnest. There's obviously reconstruction going on all the time. But it's our belief that it will require strong coordination amongst all donor nations that are looking to support the reconstruction of Ukraine. This is important in order to not overwhelm Ukraine with good intention, but instead provide coordinated support at the highest level possible in order to stabilize the situation and be in line with the capacity of the Ukrainian government, which would be overwhelmed if every country individually, without a strong level of coordination, both by individual countries, but also obviously by all multilateral organizations as well, to make sure that we're doing all that we can to rebuild and support the efforts of the Ukrainian government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. President Duda, there was a reference earlier to a grain corridor going north to the Baltic ports. Is this feasible, and what role will Poland play?
Everything is feasible, but this is the question of the price. How expensive will be this process, and how expensive will be the ton of the grain transported this way? Yes, this is. I think these questions are the most important, because this is the great threat and this is one of the greatest worries now, that we are practically facing the food crisis in big part of the world, especially in Africa, yes, in the northern Africa. And 3 weeks ago, I visited Egypt, and I talked with the president of Egypt a lot about this issue. So the situation is really very difficult. There are some negotiations conducted by Secretary General of the United Nations, and I think that, and I hope that he will find some solution for this very, very difficult situation. But of course, well, I don't know the answer now. Yes.
No, but you do know that President Putin is saying with a straight face that the West is responsible for the food shortages which are affecting and will affect countries in Africa and elsewhere. And so he's getting away with this.
Yes, but we know very clearly who is right and who is lying. Yes, and we know who invaded Ukraine. This is not that was not the invasion of the West against Russia. That was not the invasion of the West against Ukraine. That was the Russian invasion against Ukraine, and this is the only reason of the crisis. So Russia is responsible for this crisis we have now, and for this crisis, I'm afraid, food crisis in the future, and this from this point of view, the situation is very clear. The responsibility is also very clear.
Thank you, Vice President Dombrovskis.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly come in with this point, because indeed that's something we need to take seriously, and we need to seriously counter this Russia's disinformation. So something we are actively doing also from European Commission side. Just last week we had a 12th ministerial conference of the World Trade Organization, where the food security issues were actually very prominent. We managed to agree a declaration, also a decision of exempting World Food Program for any export restrictions, and so on and so forth. But also, just before this ministerial conference, from European Commission side, we organized a solidarity event with Ukraine, where together with 58 trade ministers from around the world, we made a very clear statement in this regard, that it foremost, the best response is to stop Russia's aggression, also to address food security issues. But of course, in between, we need to do everything to mitigate this, including looking for alternative export corridors for Ukrainian grain, stepping up our own food production, something which we came with some initiatives in the EU, and also in supporting vulnerable countries.
Thank you. President Steinmeier, what does the German government think should be done with the stored up grain in Ukraine, which can't get out of the Black Sea ports because of the Russian blockade?
Yeah, I'm just returning from a visit in Southeast Asia. I've been in Singapore and in Indonesia, and you won't believe it, but thousands of kilometers away from the region of war, they are feeling already the crisis, the food crisis, the rising prices for grain and especially for wheat. I think, thinking about the situation, there are two issues we have to think about. First of all, hunger and food security. And, in short term, I think there is no alternative as to support as far as possible the World Food Programme, because scarcities, I think, are not avoidable. We will experience that in the next months, mainly, as you said, Andrej, in Africa. But it's not only about hunger and food security. I think it's also about political stability. We should not forget, in 2011, what was the reason for the later so-called rebellion? It was the price of bread in Tunisia. And so therefore it's not only hunger, it's also about political stabilities. And at the end, you were mentioning that it's a fight about narratives. Some weeks ago I have been visiting some countries in Africa. I was not in Egypt, but I made similar experiences. The Russians are quite successful by distributing their narrative that the West, NATO are responsible for food shortages around the world. And so therefore I think we have to be, as Commissioner was just saying, we have to be very present, not only here in Europe with conferences, but also in the African states by telling the story, or as Andrej Duda was saying, by telling the truth that Russia was invading in Ukraine, that this is a brutal aggression against Ukraine, and that this is the reason why Ukraine is not able to export the wheat to the rest of the world. We have to repeat it and repeat it if we don't want risk that the Russian narrative is convincing to many members in the regions, especially in Africa.
So I'm now going to address the leaders of the Baltic states, and I had a particular question regarding Russia. And if you can forgive me, just very briefly, 9 years ago, I got a call on a Sunday lunchtime from the Russian ambassador in London saying, would I like to have dinner with President Putin? And so I thought about it for about 0.5 seconds and said yes. So I went along, and we were about 10 people in the room, and Mr. Lavrov was there, and Putin just looked at one person. He ignored everybody else in the room. And so all of us were saying, excuse me, and he took no notice. It was a classic trick. And so when it came to me, I decided to speak to him in German and say, well, if you want to understand the world economy, you have the various countries adjusting in the middle of the sovereign debt crisis, Mr. Dombrovskis, which you know all about. Anyway, I mentioned Spain, Italy, Portugal, France, and then I said, and the Baltic states. And he looked at me and said, why did you mention the Baltic states? And it was almost as if they're not part of. So just bearing that in mind, without putting words into your mouth, from your perspective, do you see this initiative, the 3Cs Forum, and working more closely with the countries represented on this panel, and being in the European Union as absolutely vital to your own security? Can you perhaps address this first? Start with Latvia.
Yeah, thank you very much for this statement and question. I think we are, I would say, a normal European country. It's only in the imagination of Russia that we have a special status in Russian history. It's all ridiculous. I think we are the same as Finland, as Denmark, another European country. We are sharing European values. We are developing our economy. And of course, we know our neighbor, but I would say we are going our way. And this is a European way. So that means that we are co-responsible for the development of European Union in the same way like Denmark, like Germany, like Spain. And therefore, we are interested in a strong European Union. The European Union should play the role, also the political role, which it deserves because of the economic strength. This is one of the three main economic powers in the world. But politically saying, it's I would say, only in the second row. And therefore, I'm speaking now for Latvia, but my Lithuanian and Estonian colleagues can also say something. We are for the strengthening of the European Union in different aspects, of course, politically, economically, but we have not mentioned today technology, because the technology race between the West, and the West consists of two main pillars, Europe and United States, or North America, including Canada, and on the one side, and China on the other side. Russia doesn't play a very important role in this technological race. So, but the technology, the new technology which will be ready in a few years will also determine the political weight and also, I would say, the military weight.
Thank you.
And therefore, we are for strengthening of the European Union. We are as all European states, we have the same values, the same goals, and that Russia has a special imagination concerning Baltic states, or maybe other parts of Europe, like Ukraine, but also you remember that 30 years ago, the real Russian border was in the middle of Germany. So, and I would say Russia wants to dominate Europe again, and Europe should react properly. Thank you.
President Nausėda, perhaps you could address that, and also the technology point, which is, I suppose,
would like to touch historical point of view,
yes,
because we have very long centuries of living together or living in the neighborhood of Russia, and you know, those were the centuries where there always was the pressure from the side of Russia. There were only few, probably peaceful years without any pressure coming from Russia. So, but probably this is good because Baltic countries, differently from many other countries of European Union, didn't have any illusions about the true attempts and ideas of Russia. Since the beginning of 90s, there was a very short period of probably some hopes, even in Baltic states, that Russia will become democratic. 3-4 years between 93 and 96. But afterwards, we realized very soon that Russia will not change, at least in coming decades. And we started to prepare. We started to do our homework. In the beginning of 90s, Lithuania was probably most exposed country in energy terms. We were highly reliant, dependent on the Russian supply of energy resources. And now recently, Lithuania was able to announce that we cut off all energy ties with Russia. And we were able to do this because of absence of any illusions. We built all necessary infrastructure elements in order to become independent, at least in energy terms. Oil terminal in Būtingė, then LNG terminal in Klaipėda, interconnections, and we have to do only one additional step, homework, to synchronize our electricity grid with continental Europe. And that's it. And I think this is very good that sometimes you don't have the illusions. Maybe you will not feel so happy, but you will do all necessary steps in order to become independent. And I wouldn't say that our steps were grounded only by geopolitical motivations. Because 10 years, 15 years ago, we paid political price for natural gas resources coming from Russia. And this was very clear economic, first of all, economic motivation to get rid of Russian energy resources because they manipulated all the time. Manipulations, blackmailing was always there. And this is the reason why Baltic countries are probably even better prepared than many other countries of European Union to join the sanctions mechanism, to have very clear rhetoric on Russia, and of course assist Ukraine. We are really keen supporter of Eastern Partnership countries. And I think no matter what will happen in the future, those countries have to have very clear perspective on the integration into European Union. I am talking not only about Ukraine, I am talking about Moldova and Georgia, of course, with certain preconditions. Yeah. But now our eyes are concentrated on the events in Ukraine, and our people, our politicians are very united in the country and in the whole Europe. We have to do all needed decisions in the coming EUCO meeting to grant the candidate status to Ukraine and to switch the green line to the hopes of these people, suffering people in Ukraine. I think it is very important, not only looking from the economic point of view, but looking first of all from the moral point of view.
Thank you. Can you just tell us very quickly, when will you manage to synchronize the electricity grid with the rest of Western Europe?
I will be very short. According to the plan, it should be completed in 2025, right. But we think it could be finalized even earlier.
Oh, thank you. President Karis.
Thank you. Well, to answer your question, I mean, Estonia and other Baltic states, we actually never left Europe. And using rhetorics of President Putin, we just have taken back our position in Europe. And of course, technology-wise, I mean, it is important for Estonia as well. I mean, we are a very digital country, and this is something we can assist and provide also to other countries in Europe. And as far as energy is concerned, we actually, 30 years ago, we did sell energy to Russia because we got oil shale. Oil shale is not very environmentally friendly, so we are trying to get rid of oil shale, and instead of going to establish LNG terminals in Paldiski, it's near Tallinn, and at the moment together with Finns, a floating terminal, and so forth. So we are basically in the same situation with our other Baltic colleagues, and to answer the great question, I mean, it's the same date, 2025, so, but we are probably able to do it earlier. Thank you.
Vice President Dombrovskis, I don't want to obviously put you on the spot, but candidate status for Ukraine promise of membership. Is this going to be a repeat of the Turkey story?
As regards candidate country status for Ukraine, European Commission provided its opinion last Friday, where we recommend to grant candidate status to Ukraine and Moldova immediately, followed by certain, so to say, ex post conditions policies to be implemented. And we grant also European perspective to Georgia with some ex ante conditionality before candidate country status can be provided.
Right.
The rest, of course, now we need to wait for the outcome of European summit. Provided that outcome is positive and European member states agree with European Commission's opinion and this candidate country status is granted, the rest is then in the hands of countries themselves, how they are really moving, converging with European values, with European standards, with European legislation. And we know that in recent years, or the quite many years, that not necessarily has been the case with Turkey. So here I would say it's primarily in hands of the countries themselves. But in this discussion, I would like to emphasize that that is also important geopolitical signal we are sending to those countries, that they are free themselves to choose their own destiny and which geopolitical direction they are following. And with this decision, we are clearly sending a signal to those countries that they are not staying in some kind of Russia's imagined influence zone or something like this. So this is a symbolically important step we are taking right now, and the next steps depend also already on the countries themselves, how they are approaching themselves with the EU.
Thank you. President Duda, a big challenge for you. You've only got 1 minute to answer this question. You've already using up your seconds, but
we have
go on.
Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Belarusians, Poles and Ukrainians. We have long history of more than 500 years of tradition of wars against Russia here in this part of Europe. And we are still here.
Fine, good. Thank you. You've now got 29 seconds. Just, do you think that the forum, the grouping, should stay at 12, or do you think in 3 years' time it might have 2 or 3 new members, including Ukraine?
You know, I said today that here in this part of Europe, in Central Europe, there are almost 110 million people, citizens of European Union, yes? Together with Ukrainians, this is almost 150 million people. So,
thank you.
That's a good perspective.
It is a very good answer. It's crisp. You're only 22 seconds over. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank the panel for a wonderful discussion. I'm supposed to lead you off now, I think. Is this one?
I think you all follow the moderator now. Thank you very much. I think a good round of applause can still do. Thank you very much.